טוב, I will start in Hebrew. ברוכים הבאים לפסטיבל דוקאביב גליל ה-12. אנחנו שמחים ושמחות לארח בפסטיבל את נייתן גרוסמן, במאי הסרט אני גרטה. אני אירית דולב, ובמהלך השיחה שאקיים עם נייתן אתם מוזמנים להשאיר שאלות באזור ה-Q&A, כאן למטה, בכל שלב. ולמי שצופה בנו בפייסבוק אפשר להשאיר שאלות ותגובות גם שם. אורך השיחה יהיה חצי שעה. Welcome to the 12th Dockaviv Galilei Film Festival. We are honored to have נייתן Grossman, the filmmaker of I Am Greta, with us today. I'm Irit Dolev, and we invite you to leave your questions in the Q&A section at any time. The webinar will last 30 minutes. So, first of all, I would like to say hello to נייתן. Hi, נייתן.
Hi, Irit. Shalom.
Good to see you. Shalom.
There in Israel. I didn't understand your full introduction in Hebrew, but it sounded nice.
But you understand festival and so on.
Yes, and I, of course, know of
You
Dr.
made a film.
Yes.
Yeah,
I know Dr.
cool.
Viv is, of course, famous. Even here in Sweden, we know of that festival. So it feels like such a pleasure to be able to show the film there.
Great. It's a pleasure for us. And first, I hope I find you well. How are you in this very odd time?
Yes, of course, it's a bit special for us, even here in Sweden. We've had a special way of dealing with this pandemic, so it's been fairly open here in Sweden, but now it's shutting down more. So I'm in my home in some kind of small lockdown. So we're getting used to the new way of life here as well.
Yeah, we are in the opposite, but you know, it's probably going to change again. So of course, I watched your film and I found it very strong and very interesting because it brings up so many questions that I think most of us deals with, such as activism and the ability of people to change their life and to change the environment they live in. So I would like to start with let's say, the dry detail. It's also the required one. When do you recognize that Greta is a story? I mean, at what moment or situation you decided to film her?
Yeah, I think like many documentary projects, it started with a tip. A friend of mine knew Greta's family a little bit and told me that she was going to do some kind of a small manifestation outside the Swedish government. And this was before the election, and I talked to my boss and we had a discussion and said that, okay, maybe it's worth giving 1 or 2 days to do a recce. I go down there, it's not far from the office, to see what this is and if it could be interesting. So we said I'd give it 1 or 2 days, and I went there and started to do some kind of a test filming. But of course, quickly she evolved into becoming a character, at least in the Scandinavian countries, which people discussed a lot. And there were, bypassers discussing things with her and journalists coming, interviewing her and asking her questions for the Swedish election. So we felt like, oh, this was interesting and so on. But still, it's like, a domestic story. And I decided to extend that from those 1 and 2 kind of recce days into filming a little bit more. I felt like it could be a short film or something. But I must say, I was fairly pessimistic. I sometimes at the office, they call me the pessimistic one, because I tend to be a person who, who feel like projects don't really work. So I was more into, okay, but this could be interesting, but let's wrap it up after 3 weeks of filming and we do it for the Swedish election, like a short film or something. But of course, as she progressed more and more and the movement, moved abroad, slowly but surely, I felt like, okay, but this is growing out of the Nordics and out of the spectrum that I felt was suitable at the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Were you surprised while the things became so spread?
Yeah, I think I was surprised, and I think I don't want to spoil too much of the movie. I know some of you guys might have seen it and some not, but of course I think Greta was very surprised and probably is still today of how quickly this was. I remember I did one Q&A in this American journalist. He said that after watching the film he had to rewind and and just look again that it was just 1 year that was, that the film took place. Because it's not, I wouldn't say it's not like a biopic, this film. It's more of a year in a life.
Right.
And he felt that because, it went so quickly. It was like during 1 year could like all this happen.
Yeah.
And it's still one of those things which is so fascinating with the speed that this happened. And it was definitely not something I would expect.
Yeah. By the way, do you think that your decision to accompany her and to film her at the beginning maybe played a role in the attention she received? Because we all know that media brings media. So do you think you had a role, or it was...
No, definitely not. As I didn't publish a single second of anything until after 2 years from filming. And there were journalists. This is in Sweden. She was sitting like outside the entrance of the government building. So it's one of the most kind of busy streets where politicians and journalists are. So there were other journalists there from already the beginning and the first day. And I think those articles got picked up and so on. So so I don't think it was the filmmaking.
Yeah. Okay. As an observer, I mean, from your point of view, after the long time you accompany her, what do you think is the secret of Greta? I mean, is it because of her age? Is it because she was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, which maybe leads her more attention? Or do you think she has a very, I don't know, something unique in her personality? What is it?
Of course, I think it's some kind of a mix, and it's always hard to kind of to take it down to something simplified. But I definitely think we need to kind of rewind our memories a little bit, and then think back of what was this? What time was this? This was August 2018, and at least in Sweden, we had like a very warm summer. We had forest fires all over the country, which is not very common in Sweden. And the same was taking place a little bit in Europe as well and other parts of the world. And I think there was some kind of a growing frustration going on about people feeling that, okay, wait, climate change is real. We've known this for a long time, but it doesn't seem to be happening much. So that kind of timing and that time, combined with the talent that she has in explaining and compressing this very complicated issue of climate change to something which is relatable to people, which I think comes to some extent to her Asperger's syndrome, and she being so focused on one topic and wanting to kind of understand that. I think that talent and that timing of when this happened was probably what created some kind of a spark.
I find that beyond the many, let's say, narrative elements that exist in the film, the element of a girl in an adult's world, it takes place in the film in a very strong way. And I wanted to ask, in what way did you try to emphasize that? I mean, cinematically.
Because it lagged out just when you said.
Okay, I'm asking about the thing that she's a girl in an adult's world, and I'm trying to understand in which way did you try to maybe emphasize this element cinematically in the film? Because, for example, I remember one very strong shot that you, as also a director of photography, you had this shot from behind that she's surrounding with people, and she looks very, very tiny. So in what other ways, or maybe you didn't, you try to emphasize this topic?
I was very interested. Yeah, I was very interested from the beginning as there were other, journalists covering her, and I didn't have much access to her in the beginning. I was also filming her on this kind of fairly boring street outside the government. But more and more, I started to feel like, okay, but I want to kind of be more in kind of her eye level. There's lots of people asking questions to her, and there's lots of analysis around her. But I want to understand what's kind of her inner monologue. Like, how does it sound? How is she perceiving this situation? And now you can't see me, but I'm 190 centimeters tall, so I'm fairly long. So I started shooting it on a tripod, and And quickly, I kind of clicked the camera off the tripod, and I sat down, and I scrunched my back and started to create this perspective of kind of being more inside of her point of view and inside of her head. And I kind of stuck to that style and genre throughout filming, because that was what I was curious about all the time. As you say, like bringing the camera down to her eye level. I think almost every shot in the film is actually from that perspective. And then I think it's much easier for the audience to feel for themselves. Okay, how does it feel like walking in a marsh or sailing over the Atlantic or so on? It's not the stylish and the special glittery kind of style of filming, but it's definitely, I think, the most authentic in this kind of a style, where I wanted to be inside of her kind of head more.
I thought about it that Greta's strong moments in the film are the ones that presented in the voiceover segments. And I'm curious to know, how did you work with her on those parts? Because I find she provides there a kind of, let's say, a panoramic point of view on herself and on the situations she got into, without making any kinds of spoilers.
But I think it just adds without spoiling. But it's interesting because, and I think it's also, it's probably many people watching that work within the documentary kind of realm. And for me, it's a lot that you kind of start by working more with the verite material, and especially in this project, I quickly understood that I would just kind of have to follow as much as I can and capture moments that I can kind of find, because her activism is just taking off, and I don't want to kind of influence that. So and then you get lots of material and lots of scenes, and then after kind of collecting that and looking through it, I felt like, okay, but I still would like to interview her and see if I need some kind of an interview situation to add to this. And I started doing lots and lots of kind of radio interviews with her, actually in her room, because I had noted from them filming her for a long time that she spoke better on radio than on film. And I think that's something which is very common. Probably one key why podcasts are so fantastic nowadays, because people relax a little bit more when it's just a microphone. So I started doing those interviews, and those interviews combined with that she also read from her diary notes. Sometimes when she had forgotten something, she brought the diary and she looked it up and she read passages. That kind of formed a really fantastic kind of insight into her life. And as we compiled the kind of the flow of the scenes, we started putting those kinds of interview notes in at some specific points.
Interesting. Did you feel that you, as an outside observer, maybe recognized before Greta the fact that during her struggle, the politicians and the leaders at the conferences and wherever do not really take her seriously and sometimes use her, or she felt it before you? Because obviously she felt it and she speaks about it. But I'm curious to know if you recognized it before her, because she is so young.
I don't know. I don't know. It's of course it's impossible to know at exactly what point she recognized it, and I don't even remember when I did. But I must probably say that she probably recognized it quicker than I did, because I think a big fundament of her activism, and already from early on speaking about this topic in Sweden, she has had a very kind of critical view of the system and of the politicians. So I don't think she hoped that much for politicians to listen to her from early on. But of course she gave it a chance, because if you don't try it, then you can't see if it works. So I probably think that she was the one who quickly saw that these politicians were not kind of really listening. And also that's the difference because of course I was able to follow on to some of her meetings, but it was a very big hassle following on to many of these top political meetings. Greta and many of the young activists were very open to me and other kind of journalists to come on and to film those kind of meetings. but the political system, at the other hand, tried to stop us a lot.
Yeah.
I've tried to get into so many of those meetings, and I think it comes down to the fact that Greta kind of just says what she always says. You know, she points to the facts and the figures, and the politicians, they look a bit embarrassing when they don't have any kind of any good answers to that science, and therefore they generally, you know, say, this is, you know, we don't need any filmmakers inside.
Yeah.
So that was a big surprise to me.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you also about maybe the ethical dilemmas, if you had, I don't know, but
all filmmakers always, documentary
yeah,
filmmakers
that's
always
true.
otherwise they're lying.
It's true. And I think the main issue probably deals with the issue that she is young. Did you avoid doing anything or shooting or maybe, I don't know, using any kind of materials, those scenes because she is so young? Or did you have any other ethical dilemmas in this film?
No, but I think like the main ethical dilemma when it comes to documentary filmmaking, and it doesn't actually matter if it's a child or if there's someone homeless on the street or if there's actually someone in a fairly power position. Maybe if it's a political elected person, then you can say, okay, you're on the public spotlight, so that's something different. But you need to be very mindful of that you're telling their story, and what right do I have to tell their story? And I was very clear to Greta from the beginning that for me to be able to do this, I needed to have the freedom to do my kind of point of view, that I couldn't be controlled and that I had to be able to capture what I saw. But what I could give to her was that in the end, in the edit, she could look at the film right at the kind of end passage where we had edited and compiled it. And if there was something that she totally didn't recognize with how I kind of had perceived the situation, then we could have a discussion about that. And then we could discuss if there's something to remove. And I think being humble about that is something that gives you a trust. And I didn't know how she would react to seeing it. But I remember when we screened it in like a small cinema and she watched the film, her reaction afterwards was actually that she recognized herself. And that she said that, you know, usually she's portrayed as fairly one-dimensional, as this just kind of screaming young girl who and there in the movie she had more dimensions which she recognized. And then she was more like, but I don't want to remove anything, but can we add? So it was more of like, can we add more of this? Can we add more of this? Can we add more of this? And I had to explain, of course, that, of course, you know, maybe I could add some more context to a specific place, but we have 1.5 hours to make a film, and then it sounds like this is about it. So she didn't want to remove anything, which was special.
Yeah. My next question, maybe it has connection to the last one, but it's about the. I think there are quite many very intimate situations in the film with her, and I would like to know, how did you feel that you achieved that? I mean, did you need many preparations, conversations before you filmed, or it just happened because the more you filmed her, the more she trusted you more?
Yeah, I think it's a combination. Of course, it's a combination of me being clear about that I'm doing this movie, and later on in the process, of course, I understood more what I wanted to tell with it, and that it was going to be more of a portrayal of her and how this activism kind of looked like. So being clear about that, and of course, as I said, being clear about that, you will be able to see the movie here in the end. And of course, you cannot censor and so, but we can have a discussion. It adds some trust. But I think most of the trust is added by something that we documentarians have, which is very not very common today in the media landscape, which is time. We have the time to spend together with the person to get to know that person. And that means that you don't necessarily have to film all the time. You can also sometimes just sit and have a chat, and you can, you know, travel together, and by getting to know someone, it's much easier than when a situation happens to be open towards that person to let that person capture it.
Yeah, I've noticed we have from the audience a question which has a relation to what you just spoke. They ask, what was your relationship with Greta on a personal level and also as a filmmaker level? I mean, I guess they mean, or he or she, I don't know, means that if you had separated kind of relationship or something like that.
No, but of course, I think that's one relationship in a sense, because my profession is that I'm a documentary filmmaker. So, and this is a person that I'm following. But of course, we have lots of time where you don't kind of film, and where you also speak about your life and not something which is related to even climate or the film. And in that kind of part of your existence, you become, not friends in the sense that I'm 30 years old and she's 16. So there's, always this age difference. But of course, you get to know each other well. And of course, we don't have the same contact today as we had when we were filming, but we still, chat and send messages to each other if there's something specific and so on. So it's very far from the filming, but it's still someone who I kind of have contact with in that sense over text messages and so on.
Yeah, maybe it's the time to speak about I think the most powerful scene in the film, which is actually the big climax, and it's Greta's journey across the Atlantic in a sailboat to New York. So I think, and we'll leave to the audience to watch it and to feel it, but beyond the difficulties and the sacrifice which we see in the film, can you tell us about the behind scenes? I mean, how was it like with you two on this special occasion? How long was the journey?
So the journey took about 2 weeks. I think it was 14 or 15 days. Sailing over the Atlantic. Now we all have a relationship. It's like a quarantine time for Corona. So we all know.
Now we can understand you.
It's a long time to be kind of tucked in. Now we're tucked into our homes, but these boats, I think it's easy to forget that this is not like the nice sailboats that you see outside of in these nice harbors of the Mediterranean. This is like a carbon fiber shell, which is just made to move as quick as it can over the ocean, so it becomes very bouncy and very noisy. So I remember when Greta told me that she had posted on social media that she wanted to get some help to get a lift over the Atlantic Ocean, and I filmed this movie almost completely by myself to be able to get into these rooms with high-level politicians and so on, and to get this kind of close verite style. And suddenly I was like, oh Jesus, like I need to hire someone to shoot this. Like, I can't go on a boat like that. Wow. I've sailed in the Swedish archipelago, but after speaking to the captain, I decided to join because I felt that it wasn't that, like, it would be bumpy, but maybe not dangerous. So it was a very special journey. And as you say, I don't want to spoil too much. I think the movie gives a perspective of how it felt. But of course, I think one thing which could be interesting to know of is that on these boats, like, the key issue is to kill time. So what of course isn't a part of the film, because filmmaking is not about killing time. That becomes boring. So what's maybe not missing in the film, which is interesting to remember, is of course how much time you have to just kind of sit and wait. And I think for me that was in the beginning very frustrating. And I think because I'm a kind of restless person, but I think for Greta, to some extent, when she kind of more got into it, she actually, I think, had some part of it. Of course, it was heavy on one side, but on the other side, I think also it was some time to get some time for reflection and some time to kind of think of what she wanted to say to these high leaders in the UN and get away from all the social media buzz and all the views and everything that was so much a part of her activism before. So that's definitely something from the boat ride that I could kind of give some perspective on.
Yeah, I thought about the point that for a filmmaker or film that follows activism, I think the most dangerous thing is that the film will become a pamphlet, a kind of a pamphlet or a kind of a tool that just delivers messages. So I wanted to know if you had this kind of concern, and in what way did you try to deal this danger? And I must say that we have something like 2 minutes or whatever, so.
Yeah, I think that's one danger, of course, but I think we shouldn't, like, it's hard to say that there's like one danger of making a specific film. I don't think that's the truth when all films are different. And I think more the biggest danger, I think, when it comes to documentary filmmaking is not having a clear point of view, and the movie becomes fussy. And for me, it was always the curiosity of understanding how kind of it looked like inside Greta's head, how Greta was receiving this kind of very, very emotional year and journey.
Yeah.
And I think as long as I had that kind of interest, and as long as I could go back to that, that's what I want to tell, it was so much easier to kind of navigate. And I don't think it's a pamphlet for her. It shows so much of the things that we didn't kind of know of the struggles. But of course, it also shows that why she's passionate about this. And for the people who whatever Greta says think she's some kind of a conspiracy, of course they will never like a film. But I am not doing this movie for them or for a specific audience. I'm doing it for my curiosity of how Greta is as a person.
Another questions, but it will be yes or no. Do you plan on filming her or following her more in the future? It's from the audience. Yes or no?
I would say no, probably no. I'm working on other projects, so.
Okay, cool. And you got some compliments here, amazing film, and so on. Unfortunately, we have to finish the conversation. I really enjoyed talking to you, and hopefully we're going to see your next projects in the next Dוקאביב festivals in the fresh air. Speak to you. Yeah, we need that. Also online was...
Yeah, but it was so nice, and I've been to Tel Aviv many times before, and so in that sense it feels like I'm with you guys in some small aspect. I see you guys sitting there, but maybe in the future.
Great. Thank you, נייתן, for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Irit. Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.